Virginia Master Naturalist Sandy Weber is joining us to talk about Bluebird Trails. And I met Sandy a few years ago. I think it was first maybe we were doing some work over at Wyatt Farm with the group, and that might have been some of your colleagues.
Maybe,
maybe. But then most recently at the Virginia Tech Golf Course in the Turfgrasss Research Center. And for those of you that know bluebirds, know what fascinating creatures, and Sandy's going to give us a great bit of detail about that. Sandy, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. If you'll tell the group maybe a little bit more, your background, etc., please do so. And Whitney's going to turn the screen over to Sandy's presentation.
I currently am a county coordinator for the Virginia Bluebird Society, which just means that I kind of compile data for our county and send it into the Bluebird Society and do presentations like this to try to get other people interested in bluebirding. I do have some pretty hard information, not hard, difficult, but I have factual information for you today. But more than anything, I hope that I impart how much fun it is to have a bluebird trail, because watching the birds, you actually look in the box and see the bluebirds nesting and see how they progress. So it's really a lot of fun. When I first started, I asked my neighbor to join me just as a substitute if I was out of town. And when we first started doing it and looking in the boxes, it was so much fun that we both do it together all the time. So here we go. Why do we need Bluebird Trail? This is what I'm going to cover today. Why we need Bluebird Trails, how to create one, what happens in the box, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what my experience has been. I just started doing Bluebird Trails. I'm not even exactly sure where the seed of the idea came from, but when I retired from nursing, I decided to set up a Bluebird Trail, and I had been playing golf at the Virginia Tech Golf Course and asked them if I could use the golf course, and since then I've been doing this for a few years now. So first, I'd like to make sure we're all talking about the same bird, because many people, when I say I have a Bluebird Trail, think of blue jay, which is the upper right. And we're really talking about the bluebird, the eastern bluebird, Cialia cialis, who that bird is in the left. I also put up a nuthatch, a white-breasted nuthatch. The bluebird is in the thrush family, and robins are also in the thrush family. They're very sweet birds. They have a very, I couldn't figure out how to put their call in for you, their song, but they have a very muted, little bit of a whistle tone, and they're a stunning, stunning blue. This is a portrait of a bluebird family, so you can see the male is much brighter. The female is almost identical to the male, but a grayish blue, much more dull. And then the juvenile, who's peeking out of the box there, has a spotted breast. But when it leaves the nest, it's the same size as the parents. Baby birds are generally not smaller than their parents. They don't leave the nest until they're full size. You might also see a little yellow around the beak on the fledgling, and you'll see some more pictures of that in a moment. So Bluebird Trail is just a series of boxes set up to promote nesting of bluebirds and other cavity nesters. And those include tree swallows, house wrens, chickadees are the most common. You can also see titmice, Carolina wrens here south of, I'd say, the Mason-Dixon line. And some, those are basically the birds you would see. So why do we have bluebird trails? What is the problem? In colonial times, bluebirds were as common as the American robin. And in fact, they probably benefited from colonization and the initial clearing of the land from agriculture because bluebirds really like open spaces with very little ground cover. They need trees, but they do like turf with intermittent trees. And we've had so much habitat loss and then introduction of 2 exotic species that outcompete them, that there was concern that bluebirds might become extinct. In 1972, it was thought that we had about a 90% loss in the bluebird population. And it was listed on an Audubon Society list called the Blue List. Currently, the population is being supported by artificial boxes, and it is considered in an area of a species of least concern. So the first trail was actually in 1926. A man named Thomas Musselman set up a Bluebird Trail. He eventually got 1,000 boxes, and he lectured and wrote about Bluebird Trails. And they were kind of slow to take off, but the information was out there that this was possible. And then in the 60s and 70s, after Silent Spring and with the birth of the environmental movement, people got more interested in it. And a man named Dr. Larry Zeleny wrote a seminal article for the National Geographic called Song of Hope for the Bluebird. And this spurred formation of the North American Bluebird Society. Dr. Zeleny was the president of the North American Bluebird Society, and many state societies followed. Here in Virginia, we have the Virginia Bluebird Society. I don't know how many states have them. I know Ohio has them because I've lived there and set up some bluebird boxes there for a friend. We think there are about 22 million eastern bluebirds. There is also a mountain bluebird and a western bluebird, and they are west of the Mississippi. And they also are very amenable to artificial nest boxes. And if you go out west, you'll see Bluebird Trails out there as well. To give you an example of how many boxes are out there and how many people are involved in bluebirding, in 2017, almost 5,000 nests were reported to the Virginia Bluebird Society. That's just in Virginia. And there are lots more nest boxes out there.
Now, those are artificial or?
Those are artificial nest boxes,
Okay.
nests in artificial boxes that people set up and reported back to the Bluebird Society. There are many more boxes out there. I know of a gentleman here in Montgomery County who has over 600 boxes, and he doesn't report his data. So I know that there are just tons of boxes out there. Once I became county coordinator, I've had a few people tell me about boxes in their yards that are here and there. So there are a lot of birds being supported by these, by housing. So you can become a landlord too. So bluebirds' beaks are too weak for them to build their own cavities. They're considered secondary cavity nesters. So they have to find a natural hole, which means a damaged tree or an old tree. Woodpeckers are primary nesters, primary cavity nesters, so they make holes themselves. And then a lot of times bluebirds will use a hole from a former woodpecker nest. And there's just been a dramatic loss of cavities. Just general land clearing. And then old trees, we have a very litigious society. We worry about our electric grid. So people are encouraged in the suburbs to take their old trees down to make sure they don't fall in a storm, fall in their house. I know we all heard about a tragedy in North Carolina this last week with a tree falling. But that's what one of the problems is for bluebirds. I know on the Virginia Tech campus, they're very careful to remove trees right away if there's any risk that they can fall. Also, we used to have wooden fence posts that became old and holes were in them, and nobody uses those anymore. They use metal posts. Also, agriculture, the scope of agriculture has gotten so much larger. We used to have hedgerows that had trees on them that were ideal places for bluebirds, but now with huge agricultural equipment, people are getting rid of hedgerows and the fields are much, much larger. So all of these things have contributed to loss of cavities. And then we have two major competitors for the same space that bluebirds use. The house sparrow, many of you will be familiar with it, with what it looks like. It's a Eurasian bird. You'll see it in Europe and Asia. It's just about all over the world now. It was brought to the US to control pests. It's very closely associated with cities and agriculture. If you see an old or a farm field or barnyard that has spilled grain, you'll see house sparrows. There are about 70 million in the United States, and they will actually kill bluebirds at times. It's not common that they do that, but if they're competing for nesting space, they will actually kill adults or nestlings and take over the space. The European starling has a little bit different trajectory to the United States. A man named Eugene Schäfflein introduced it in 1890. He wanted to have all the birds that were found in Shakespeare's writing found in North America or the United States. So now there are over 200 million starlings in the United States, and they're a very big competitor for space. Also, herbicides and pesticides are a problem for bluebirds. I'd like to change this slide. I put that bluebirds are insectivores. They feed their young insects almost exclusively, but they will eat fruit. They're big berry eaters in the winter. They particularly like the sumac. Well, they like all berries, but I've seen them a lot on the sumac plumes, the dried fruit of the sumac. But because they eat insects, pesticides that are killing caterpillars and other invertebrates can interfere with their food supply. And then insects need plants. Very often insects have evolved very closely with plants. So by taking care of some of these weeds and other things, that can be a problem. And then chemicals can just pollute their water supply. So maybe you're getting interested in a bluebird trail. This is what you would need to have, is some suitable habitat. And they like open land with scattered trees and bushes. So I have found the Virginia Tech Golf Course has been just so productive. We have 6 boxes there, not very many, but every one of them has only bluebirds. I don't have tree swallows or house wrens because there's almost no ground cover. It's all turf with big trees and some shrubs. So parks, pasture land, golf courses, cemeteries are all good areas. And I'm just going to recommend that if you have a lot of house sparrows, I won't say don't start a bluebird trail, but be prepared for the possibility that you may have to evict house sparrows. And that I have not had to do it. I'm going to recommend some sources for you with information. And the book that I've used, they have information on how to evict house sparrows, but gee, I wouldn't want to have to do it. So yeah. It could be a problem for you. So then you need the suitable boxes. This is a good project for Boy Scout groups, Girl Scout groups. If you think you might want to have a bluebird trail on property that you manage or care for, but don't want to do the work, this would be a good opportunity to involve a civic group like Master Naturalist or church youth group. And they might want to be building boxes. I purchase my boxes from someone who sells them at cost and does it as part of his Master Naturalist project. But of course they should be well constructed so they don't let in rain. Natural wood is said to be preferred. They need to be open, easy to open and monitor. So, because you're going to look in them and monitor them, and you want to clean them at the end of the season. The hole size is very specific. It has to be 1.5 inches, no larger or no smaller. If woodpecker or other bird starts to enlarge the hole, I can buy a little brass protector that I just tack onto the front of the hole, and that prevents.
I think you had, that was in your original picture, that was around the hole to keep it from being bored out larger.
Yeah. They should be mounted on a smooth round pipe, not on a fence line. So I use conduit, and you'll see, I'm going to show you some pictures of that. Many people do use a fence line or a tree, and you know, if you have raccoons and snakes where you are, that could be a problem. So we do recommend predator guards. I'm going to show you some. If you put them 5 feet off the ground, most people can monitor them easily, and the bluebirds accept that height readily. 5 feet off the ground is a little difficult for me to see down into the nest, so I usually carry a little hand mirror with me. And when you're sighting the box, you want to put it facing away from prevailing winds and not too far from a tree or shrub, because in their maiden flight, the fledglings usually will fly to a tree. So, but I also like to face it away from the hot sun. So sometimes there's a conflict of which do you do. Then you also want to face it away from a road. So each box, you have to kind of look at the specific site and select the best option. So these are the types of, this is a box that I use. It has to be at least 4 inches square to get enough space for the birds. There's no perch, you notice. A lot of decorative bird boxes have a little dowel at the bottom of the hole for birds to sit on, and that's not necessary. So the Noel guard at the top around the hole there is hardware cloth, and I've made those. Mine are not perfectly rectangular, but the birds still fly in. It doesn't discourage them, but a raccoon can't get up on top of that box and reach in. And then the stovepipe baffle at the bottom keeps snakes and other animals from going up. And the thick roof helps to protect from hot sun and rain. There's an overhanging roof that prevents rain from entering the hole. And these are some reasons that you want predator guards. This is my husband and a friend helping install some boxes. We gave them a gift of 4 boxes that we installed last year. And before we had left the field, they have a property of about 160 acres in southeast Ohio. We put these up in October, and before we left the field, there were bluebirds checking out the boxes. It was pretty amazing. I usually put my boxes up in October or November before the ground freezes. It's just always nice to have a work day in the fall when the weather's nice. And then the birds can use the boxes in the winter for nighttime roosting when cold weather hits. My boxes have a vent in the front, an air vent, so they don't get too hot. So I put some foam in that box to winterize it and put some clean straw in. They recommend that you put boxes about 300 feet apart, but an exception would be, for example, at the Turfgrasss Center, we have a lot of tree swallows there, and I could theoretically pair those boxes, put another box next to the tree swallow box, 5 to 15 feet away, and then 2 tree swallows would not nest next to each other because of the competition, but a bluebird might use the other box.
So I had 3 boxes in a very small backyard. Yeah. That sounds like I overdid it at least by 1. But what I was looking for, I had bluebirds in one, and they're tree swallows that kept visiting the others. But the territorial nature of the bluebird would not let the tree swallows move into the other one to do that. Now, are they very territorial? Was this just a particular, because I usually saw it the other way, that tree swallows usually overwhelm the bluebirds. In this year's case, the bluebirds, they rule the roost, literally.
I think some of it has to do with who gets there first.
Okay.
Not all birds will remove nests, but sometimes you'll find a nest was started by one type of bird and someone will go on top of it. They'll like maybe poke it a hole in an egg or start just building on top of a nest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure I can answer your question about what was going on there. You do see some weird things that you're not always sure that you can explain. And brushy habitat like we have surrounding the Turfgrasss Research Center really encourages a lot of wrens, who are adorable birds entitled to their space, but they like to build dummy nests. So they'll fill up 3 or 4 boxes just with sticks, and then you don't know which one they're going to use. You're not really allowed by law to remove their nests until you're sure they're really not
not going to nest
they're
there.
not going to nest there. So here's somebody monitoring a nest. You can see he's using a mirror. So most people think that you shouldn't disturb a bird's nest because they'll stop using the nest. They'll desert their young or their eggs. And that's not really true. Bluebirds and most birds are tolerant of careful monitoring. And people who are bluebirders really stress that it's important to regularly monitor the nest. And there are some times that you can intervene if there is a problem. A lot of people do report their nesting success, their data, to the Virginia Bluebird Society. NABS, North American Bluebird Society, does not collect the data. It's either a local Bluebird Society, like the Virginia Bluebird Society here, or Nestwatch. Nestwatch is a citizen science project at the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. And they have quite a few different projects going on. They have a hummingbird watch, but Nestwatch has some great, they have a wonderful brochure online about how to monitor nests, both on a Bluebird Trail and wild nests of other birds. And they have a lot of recommendations. You can set up an account and send all your data in online. For the Virginia Bluebird Society, they have on their website forms that you can download, and like a weekly form for each box, and then a summary, a season end summary of your data.
Sandy, what kind of problems would you anticipate that you might be able to solve by watching this?
Here's that was.
Be quiet and listen.
Well, that was a great question, Mike. So these are a few of the ideas, things that might happen. Number one, I've alluded to the house sparrow problem, that they can kill adults in nestlings and drive them from boxes. So there are a lot of suggestions about how to get rid of house sparrows. Some people think there are some boxes that have 2 holes, and I think they think that the bluebirds can escape from it and that the house sparrows don't like it. There are traps you can put in, wire traps that you can put in to remove them. Snakes and raccoons, so if that's happening, it means that you haven't put predator guards up probably. Mice will build nests in the winter and then you can remove them. Paper wasps, you can take soap and rub the soap on the inside of the box, and that will discourage the paper wasps. Ants or other insects, I carry a little squeeze bottle of diatomaceous earth. And if I start seeing a lot of insects, I will carefully squirt some diatomaceous earth under the nest and maybe around the base of the pole to keep them away. Now, if you start, I can't talk about all the problems today, but if you have a problem that North American Bluebird Society, NABS, their website has a hotline that you can call and ask for help. So this is the kind of the fun part, what happens in the nest box. First, before they go into the nest, there's a courtship. Sometimes the male will feed the female. He does a display with his wings and flutters around in front of the female. And then she picks a final nesting place, and they both build the nest. Over at Virginia, at the golf course, we have a lot of Virginia white pine, and those nests are almost always pine needles. At the Turfgrasss Center, we have a lot of dry grass from around the woods, and so we get a lot of dry grass nests. And then they both build the nest, but she will mold a cup shaped into the top of the nest where she'll lay the eggs. Here's some more nest building. They are just stunning birds. So the female will lay 1 egg each morning. Here in Virginia, our part of Virginia, at the golf course, we usually see 5 eggs in the nest, occasionally 6. The second brood, because a lot of times most of my bluebirds will have a second brood. I've even had one pair start a 3rd brood, but usually the second brood has fewer eggs. So usually 4 or 3 eggs. They're usually blue, but there's one pair over the Turfgrasss Center that has white eggs.
Now, and that pair, you've seen?
Well, twice I've had nests with white eggs, so I'm kind of guessing it's the same pair, but I can't tell you for sure that I've seen.
And after the first brood, and again, you told me to be quiet.
No, go right ahead.
But after the first brood, would you remove that nest?
That is a really great question, and there's a lot of debate about that. And sometimes I do, if the nest looks dirty, if it looks like it has parasites in it, because there's a blowfly parasite that's a problem, I will sometimes remove it. But everything I've read tells me that the answer is not out there yet, that there are advantages and disadvantages, that it takes more energy for them to build a second nest, and that there's some pests of the parasites that you're removing, the natural pests that would control the parasites. And then sometimes I usually go every 5 to 7 days. So I've had birds leave the nest. Before I got back to it, building had already started on a second nest. Right. So it's up for debate.
Okay.
Here's the female brooding or sitting on the eggs. She sits for about 18 days. She'll only leave the nest for a short period of time. And she starts incubating all the eggs at the same time. So they all hatch the same day and fledge the same day. Occasionally, the female, usually as I walk up to the nest, I speak, I talk, I say hello, and do just a very gentle tap, not to scare her, but many times she won't leave the nest until I open the box. My opening is on the side, so I always stand to the side because they will shoot out pretty quickly. It can be startling. And then here you can see them starting to hatch. And these are day 1. You can see they don't have any feathers. They can't open their eyes. They can really not hold their heads up. This type of bird is called altricial. They're helpless at birth, as compared with precocial birds, which are like a duckling. After a few hours, it can follow its mom around and pretty much fend for itself. But this type of bird stays in the nest for a certain period of time. This is day 5. I keep with me when I'm making my rounds a color photo of each day, so each time I make a notation about what's happening in the nest, I notate how many days the eggs, how old the eggs are, how many days, and how old the chicks are, because I want to know that, because when the chicks get to a certain age, you don't want to look in the box. Here you can see the gape. I'm going to go back one. You can see the yellow around the beak. When the nestlings open their mouths and look up, it makes a target for the parents to drop food into their mouths, and you can see that demonstrated here. So that's day 7. Here's day 11. They're getting feathers. If you spread the wings, the ones that have blue feathers will be males. The parents will feed the chicks from dawn till dusk. Usually it's about 5 times an hour. Seems like more to me. They also remove fecal sacs. These are pretty clean nests. You asked about, Mike, about cleaning the nest. After the tree swallows get out of their nest, they're just filthy. They've got
They're cemented
guano,
together.
yeah,
Yes.
all over them. But the bluebird nests are quite clean, which is why reusing them doesn't seem so terrible. But the tree swallow nest does seem pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
So here is a nestling, a juvenile, getting ready to leave. They fledge at 16 to 20 days. You do not want to open the box after 12 days because you can cause premature fledging, meaning the birds will leave too early and then they're very vulnerable to predation. So if you are going to monitor and look in the boxes, you should be careful about it and try to estimate how many days they are.
Now, Sandy, where did your little, again, surrounding that hole, because I see folks that don't normally do that. Is that something you purchased, handmade?
You know, these were given to me, but my brass, I have little brass protectors, and I buy them from a company that sells gardening tools, and it's called Kinsman Company, and they sell them on their website. But I think, I'm kind of guessing this box might have come this way. There are some reasonably priced cedar boxes on the market that you can purchase.
Okay.
Just another pretty shot of a bluebird feeding its young. I think that's the same bird. And I just have a few more slides. I just want to note, just comment at the bottom, all native birds are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So you're not actually legally allowed to have nests or eggs or even feathers of birds. It's against the law, or to remove nests until the end of the season when they're no longer active. The Virginia Bluebird Society does put county coordinators on a special permit that they get. So I can actually bring a nest and with eggs that if it's been abandoned and I've collected it, I'm allowed to have that, but you need a special permit. This is a tree swallow nest, and they are just wonderful flyers. They're just fun to watch. They eat tons and tons of insects. They line their nest with feathers, and they're just beautiful nests. And usually the female will not leave the nest when you open the box. She will just sit there. It's pretty remarkable. Here's a little house wren. They're cute as a button. They usually have little brown speckled eggs. They'll have 7 or 8 eggs. And when you see that nest full of little house wren, baby wrens, it's just adorable. They fill their box completely with twigs, almost to the top. They do make a cup, but it's hard to see sometimes. And they include little spider nests in their nesting material that's thought to reduce mites and other pests for their nestlings. But they can fill up some of your boxes. And then chickadees and titmice will nest in the boxes. They build a nest with hundreds and hundreds of little pieces of moss. They make a little mat of about 2 inches deep of moss, and then they make a little cup and line it with fluff from seeds, plant seeds, and I think maybe dog hair. I don't know where they got all their stuff, but they're always lined with a very soft material. And if you want additional information, I mentioned several times the North American Bluebird Society, their website, Virginia Bluebird Society website, Nest Watch, and I learned to do bluebirding through the Bluebird Monitor's Guide, which is a book you can buy at any bookstore or online, and it is put out by Cornell, and it's an excellent reference.
So if you were in Virginia watching this, and this is of interest to me, would you first go to the Virginia Blue? What's the way to start to say, I need to learn more, what's available?
I think either source is great. The North American Bluebird Society, both Virginia Bluebird Society and North American Bluebird Society are very inexpensive to join. like for $20, you can join the North American Bluebird Society, and they will send you with your membership. Can you see if I hold this up? Or the fact sheets, getting started with bluebirds, monitoring bluebird nest boxes, nest box recommendations, house sparrow control. They'll send you this information for free. I believe it's out there on the website, whether you join or not. And it's the same thing with the Virginia Bluebird Society. This is the book that I mentioned. Got a lot of color, a lot of pictures. And although I made recommendations about using a pole and not using a tree, and putting it at 5 feet, you'll see pictures in here of all sorts of Bluebird box setups, Bluebird Trail setups. So it's an excellent book. So I think any of these sources, I don't think NestWatch will give you information about how to set up a Bluebird Trail. They'll tell you how to monitor, and they have a really great brochure on how to monitor. I think I would start with the top two.
Okay.
And forms for data, for just collecting your data, Virginia Bluebird Society. And if you do set up in Virginia, go to their page, county coordinators, and find your county coordinator, and they can help you.
With now, time of year, kind of a question too, because again, I'm fascinated by them. And again, hopefully some people will take this and say, yeah, I want to do this because you just watch these birds and what's going on. Should I have my boxes cleaned out now? Why I'm asking was I still see the bluebirds coming back to visit from time to time. The titmice are also now exploring, but I've not done anything to clean them out from the last.
I would clean out the box. Some people recommend sanitizing it by spraying it with a mild chlorine solution and leaving it open so it airs out. I use alcohol. I don't know. I don't know how sanitary you have to be, but I would then winterize it. Birds don't use the boxes as homes. Like they go in and out all day, like we do with our homes. They nest in it for a few weeks and then they leave. In fact, the first brood will stick around with the parents and maybe even help raise the second brood. But I would winterize the box. In other words, fill in the vent holes and put in some clean straw. And then in early March, clean it out again and get it ready. They'll be looking in March to
Have them ready.
Have them ready by March.
Eastern bluebirds are staying here though. They're not overwintering somewhere else.
I think that they stay right here. Some of them may go a little farther south to the Carolinas, but I think most of ours actually stay put. We're at elevations, so maybe ours drop down a little bit and go a little farther where it's a little warmer. But I have bluebirds in the winter. I have bluebirds at my feeder. And on snowy days, I put dried mealworms out and food out where they can see it more easily, which is, I think, how they started coming to my feeder. If you have a bluebird in your yard and you want to attract it to a box, the most reliable way to do that is to buy live mealworms.
Okay.
And you can, some people who are really avid bluebirders raise their own mealworms, but you can buy them from like Exotic Pet Nutrition and Droll Yankee Feed, or there's a big bird seed company, I can't think the name of it offhand, but they also sell live mealworms. And you can put them in a little plastic box with some bedding in your refrigerator. Just don't show your dinner guests that you.
Yeah, I can't see that happening in my house, but yes.
But that is a way, and that is actually how I got started with bluebirds, because I put one bluebird box in my yard. And I was so excited that here in Central Blacksburg, I had a bluebird, and someone from the Bluebird Society wrote to me and said, get some mealworms and they'll stay and nest in your yard. And that's what I did.
So the purpose that I want you to come is the work at the golf course and at the Turfgrasss Research Center. Now you continue to work at the TRC trying to better what you're thinking there, because I know you've met with John. We need to improve some.
So the Virginia Tech golf course, as I mentioned, out of 6 boxes, we've had 6, all bluebirds. This year we fledged 42 bluebirds out of those 6 boxes. The Turfgrasss Research Center, where I have more boxes, I only have 12. I have 12 boxes. We only fledged 11 bluebirds. We had 3 bluebird nests. And I believe it's because when I first set up the trail, it's been there for 2 years, I really wanted to stay out of the mowing operations. So I put everything along the perimeter, and it's very close to the Huckleberry Trail and some border, like little forest patches that have understory and a lot of weedy growth. So I just met with John, the manager there, and we've figured out where to relocate about 6 boxes so they're more in the center of the turfgrass areas, away from the edges.
We do have tree swallows there because the student workers tell me they get dive bombed anywhere they get near
the nest.
The nest.
Yes, the bluebirds won't do that. Bluebirds will, when you're opening their box, they'll go up to a tree branch nearby and call to you and kind of make a quiet fuss. But the tree swallows, when you open their box, they will dive bomb you. The house wrens they'll just start chattering like crazy. They're loud birds. For a little bird, they're very loud.
So you might tell me this was a bad thing to do. You mentioned the warble, the song, which I think is fascinating. So I would find the song on my phone and go sit on my back porch to play it, to watch what would happen. And our nesters would show up furious.
Well, that's considered a breach of birding etiquette.
Oh, no, that's what I was afraid of.
I'm afraid to tell you.
Okay, I won't do that anymore.
Well, what happens is they use a lot of energy trying to defend their territory,
so that's what
unnecessarily.
It's a territorial defense.
Yes.
I should have known, because it would make them come. And I'm like, we're the bluebird. And then the male.
Well, if you want to get all the birds to come, play a screech owl. And they'll all come to mob you. But again, that's considered a breach of birding etiquette.
Okay, all right, breach the birding etiquette. Well, I should have known better, but yeah, it was amazing how quickly they would show up. So this to me is, we've got so many more opportunities. Parks, you mentioned, even
cemeteries.
Yes.
I saw in this Bluebird Monitor's guide, there's some pictures in a cemetery, and he had them on a telephone pole, but quite high up. And then I think in some parts of the country, they're using the back of highway road signs. Now, they're in Iowa, when I lived there, they were putting kestrel boxes on the back of highway road signs for improving kestrel nesting. But there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of suburban properties that could accommodate that. Just think of the front of the Corning plant here in Blacksburg.
Yeah.
It's this huge
open
lawn,
space,
a huge open
trees
space
on the perimeter.
That would be a great spot.
Okay, and many HOAs, green spaces. Again, I didn't know if you've been involved in the Wyatt Farm subdivision, but that was
But then along the berms there,
Yeah.
The man who makes my bluebird boxes lives in Charlottesville, in a very ritzy neighborhood, and they're all 5-acre properties, and just up and down his road, he has boxes along the berm.
Yeah. Whitney, are there any
questions?
Any questions?
No, surprisingly.
Okay. We will, if you have any questions, please, because we are at 10:45, so we've still got time to take that. But we're not gonna sit here all day long and let me tell you more about my lack of birding etiquette, because I've done breached the birding code here. But it just struck me that this is something, because in most cases, you mentioned about the use of pesticides, and so we're trying to preach to people, when you manage turf, you're using them, use them properly to support not only health of the grass, health of the environment, health of the birds. But what surprises most people is that they would assume that lawn situations, golf situations, parks would be bad for birds.
Because there are a lot of herbicides and pesticides. Well, I do notice that in both places where I have my boxes, the managers have put some herbicide right along the base of the pole, so they don't have to weed eat there, but it doesn't seem to have impacted my success. So.
Yeah, I still think it makes sense. We should always use these things responsibly, but a lot of people, when I talk to them about bluebirds, were like, well, I would assume that a managed turf would be a terrible spot for bluebirds. And it's like, no, it's actually the habitat.
It seems to
Yeah.
be
Quite desirable. So I don't know, but yeah, these birds fascinate me. Purple martins fascinate me as another group. And
well, there's a Purple Martin Day in Virginia. There's a gentleman who sponsors a Purple Martin Day that you may want to go to. It's when the purple martins are coming back to his condo, his martin condo, and it's a whole day of events to learn about attracting purple martins. So I can give you the information.